We are here for our very first WTF1 podcast with our launch partners, Yas Marina Circuit. We are here in Abu Dhabi, and I'm joined by Nick from Yas Marina Circuit. We've got Jess and we've got Tommy. And for our audio listeners, because this is also available via audio, I'm going to get you all to say hello so people know who you are. So Nick.
Hello.
Jess.
Hiya.
Tommy.
Hi.
Alistair as well, who's in the background.
Hi.
And me, obviously. So we're going to be talking about all things motorsport, but obviously mainly Formula One, because we're a little bit biased with that. And the Australian Grand Prix. Mm-hmm. So guys, we haven't been able to talk about the Australian Grand Prix purely because we're saving it for the podcast.
It was a long, awkward flight of silence, and
it was, wasn't it? So we let. To give everyone context, we have a sheet where we put all of the talking points on, don't we? So we kind of add to it as the race unfolds, and we're now here and we can talk about it. Ali in the background as well will pitch in now and again. So let's kind of go chronologically. So obviously you've got free practice, and then qualifying was probably the main instant to first talk about. Was Valtteri Bottas, maybe? Bottas.
I'm going to be slightly controversial here, but I have never rated Bottas ever.
Even at Williams?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, again, you have to have a certain caliber to get to F1, but I remember watching him at Silverstone 2015. Was that the year where Williams leapfrogged the Mercedes? Both of them were out in front. They were holding Mercedes up. Mercedes could not get past no matter what. And I was like, please, Williams, please do not mess up the strategy.
And they did.
That
was Massa. They should have switched the cars, but they always get into that situation where, when a team that doesn't normally win, which when I started watching F1, I can't believe we're saying that about Williams, but they're not used to it. And
at the same time, it's not fair. It's like, in a sense, for Bottas, who's never won a race at that stage, to just move out of the way. Oh, you were leading the race, get out of the way. It's like this guy wants to win as much as anyone on the grid, probably. And to this day, I still don't know how they didn't win that race. They had it under control. Well, if the strategy had worked out.
But that's the thing. To win championships, you need to have a strategy for every occasion. And Silverstone, it rains. It's the UK. It rains, and you have to be prepared for that. And a big part of it is luck, but it's also down to driver intuition, feedback, what's happening on track. The engineers only have a certain amount of data that they can use that's being taken from the car itself. The driver has to know. I mean, Jenson Button, for instance, was incredibly good at knowing when to change tyres.
Never rated Jenson Button.
Debatable.
And Lewis, I think Jenson had great tyre strategy.
He got lucky.
Anyway, I think for that particular race, again, it fell into Lewis's hands. He came in at the exact right moment. But on the radio, as soon as it started getting wet out there, Bottas was like, "Bring me in on wets." And nobody, he panics. And he's never shown me any kind of skill where I'm like, he's a world champion.
Let's use the crash in particular at Australia as an example. It was just a pure mistake, and the fact that he's stayed in the throttle, he should know in that stage where he's gone wide, he's going to be on the grass, there's no runoff.
It's harsh for him to make that mistake straight away, because he had that lull mid-season where Hamilton just took off, absolutely smashed it at the end of the season and won the title convincingly, and people were starting to lay into Bottas, but then he won the last race here in Abu Dhabi, convincingly beat Hamilton. Arguably, you say Hamilton sort of gives up a little bit once he's won the title.
He hasn't won any
never,
races
ever won a race after winning the title. Yeah,
that's a crazy stat.
Weird stat. But you think, okay, Bottas, right? I got the one up on Hamilton in the last race. This is my year. I can take the fight to him, and then he bins it in qualifying.
Which again, I just think is down to.
I think he's got a lot of pressure on him though, because he's up against one of the greatest drivers ever, regardless if you're a fan of him or not. But the fact that Hamilton was able to put in such a fast qualifying lap, so much faster than everyone else, and Bottas has got to do well this year, or else he's.
But I mean, to your point, you mentioned about not having the skills to be a champion, but managing pressure is. That comes with the business. It comes with what he does. It can't be an excuse for not performing. It has to be.
Exactly.
It's a given. Must be a given. Your ability to manage pressure.
But he was a GP3 champion a couple of years back before he joined F2 and then F1. He has been a champion of other lower formulas. But
what did you make of Bottas's performance last year? Obviously, soaking up.
It wasn't a great race. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a great race, and it sort of, and your point about Lewis Hamilton not winning any race after he's been crowned champion. I don't know. It seemed he'd sat back and was quite happy for Bottas to take the win. But I mean, despite we got up, as a person, you like certain drivers, but actually, what you want to see is drama on the track.
Yeah.
At any cost, you want to see drama on the track, and we didn't see it. All of the team strategies were the same. Yeah. Hamilton looked comfortable to sit back, frankly.
We were here last year, which was great, and we were obviously very excited for the race, and we were sat in the social hub on the back straight, and we were watching. It was the support series first, and they were so exciting. They were going 4 wide into that corner off the back straight, and we were all sat there in the hub like, oh my gosh, like everyone was turning around like, what's going on? We were like, the F2 is literally so exciting right now, and then the F1 cars come out, and it's a completely different setup, and nothing's changed. Nothing's happened.
There's no different
track
layout. There's nothing, is there?
It's literally like what? So
it's a different ball game on every track. Like Formula One, you have those tracks. Even say like Albert Park, people were talking about it this weekend, saying, "Oh well, they can never overtake at Melbourne." And then people say it about Bahrain. Oh, it's never a good race in Bahrain. But then F2 is consistently amazing, and you go, well, what about? Well, there's a lot of stuff that's different, and that's what Formula One needs to address.
Do you not find that it's mainly the cars that all this aero is causing so much bad turbulent air?
But then F2 have now changed their cars to match Formula One cars.
I suppose, but last year F2 was really exciting because they were less aero, whereas now they're more aero. Maybe it's worth seeing what it's like this year, and whether if F2 is still as exciting, then F1 is definitely doing something completely different.
So we've somehow gone from Bottas to F2. So let's go.
Firstly, I guess seeing as we've got Nick here, as a track, how do you manage that? Because obviously you have to take into account F1 changes, but how can a track increase the drama for an F1 fan, or increase the entertainment? Is there anything that was within your power, or are you beholden to aerodynamics and downforce? Because I guess it's tough, right?
Which we shouldn't be, and as a tracks are not cheap to build. I'm not stating the obvious; they're not cheap to build, and it's not something you have a race. For example, as it played out last year, I don't think no one intended for it to play out that way. It just did, And then there's talk about changing the configuration of the track. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar decisions, based on how one particular race played out. So I don't think it's on us as the track, but on the basis, obviously, that assuming that the base level track is solid. It was designed by Herman Tilke. It's a solid track. Visually, it looks great, but it's also good to drive. We've had plenty of drama on this track, so it really is about perhaps the rules.
Because in Australia in Australia they added an extra DRS zone, to help with overtaking.
We've got DRS zones, and to some degree it helps, and we try and push it out to audiences. But it's a very committed audience that see that as a motivating factor, and we really shouldn't need to drop down to DRS zones in order to, drum up some excitement and interest from our audiences. Just some good old-fashioned, mechanical-driven based competition, and drama.
It's weird because Formula One fans just, I'm the same. If there's a boring race, I'm like, oh, that race was not great. I'll happily voice my opinion and be like, it was boring. But at the same time, if you look at other sports like football, when there's a 0-0 draw, you don't see fans going, change the football pitch. Exactly. I want the football pitch to be smaller,
And quite often when the stakes are high, they get boring. The games are boring, they play defensively, and if both teams are playing defensively, you'll get a boring game.
Yeah, I
personally really enjoyed Formula One last year. It was really unfortunate that the title happened the way it did at the end, because even the races beforehand, people complain about overtaking, but for me, that's not why I don't watch F1 for them to be overtaking every single corner. I actually quite enjoy watching
the
Formula
strategic
One
aspect as well.
Yeah, it's like sometimes the fact that they can't pass is more exciting, because you saw like Hamilton and Vettel at the end of the race. If Hamilton had just breezed past him because his car's so much quicker, he'd just be off. But the fact that you get 5, 10, sometimes 20 laps, if you think of the most exciting races ever, it always goes back to things like Senna and Mansell at Monaco. There was no overtaking in that race, yet everyone always talks about how amazing it was. And I admit, the 2012 era was brilliant, but also you had the opposite, where fans were going,
it was
people were breezing past on tyres that were 4 seconds a lap quicker, and DRS.
It wasn't overtaking, was it?
It wasn't overtaking, because they'd overtaken each other way before the braking zone. So they weren't out braking, it was just slipstream motorway overtakes. And then when the season started in 2017, everyone's like, oh, they can't really overtake. You had that first race where Vettel and Ricciardo in China, was it, were wheel banging, and everyone was like, well, the overtakes are amazing now, because they really have to go for it.
For me personally, I'd rather the drivers having to push every single lap of every race throughout the whole season, where they have to be gladiators essentially, rather than tooling around, saving your tyres. Obviously, we've got a little bit of a saving engines issue going on in the sport.
I mean, that's the thing, the sport doesn't help itself.
No.
I understand that those changes are put in place for certain reasons, but Hamilton had to back off at the end of the race on Sunday, because he was thinking, I could push and I could probably overtake Vettel. And us as fans would have been like, yes, but that engine has to last 7 races.
That ruins the first race as well.
Yeah, that ruins all the work for Formula One. They made a new logo, they did a theme tune to make it really exciting. They pushed the whole fight for the 5 titles between Hamilton and Vettel.
Yeah.
And then you go, right, Hamilton versus Vettel, 10 laps to go, on-track battle, this is brilliant. Oh, wait, he's got to save his engine. And Hamilton himself said it's against I've read something today, Hamilton said, obviously he would because he didn't win, but he said this is not motorsport.
No.
That Ayrton Senna wouldn't have, had to save his engine, and he had a Honda.
Yeah, and Max.
Imagine in football where you didn't score a goal because you wanted to save your football boots.
Yeah.
We don't want Messi to get injured. Just back off a little bit. Don't try.
Well, you see it sometimes in friendlies, right? They won't play a hard game because they don't want to get injured for the real event, and it's not good for the sport.
It's not good. It ruins for me. That was the most frustrating thing about the race, was the engine saving, and I absolutely despise it because it's not. I don't get that it's a cost thing, because Mercedes and Ferrari have so much money anyway. Yeah. They're spending like look how much they pay Hamilton. An extra engine means nothing, and it just screws everyone.
It's after the last season as well, when so many penalties were dished out, and then right, we're going to take away one more engine. It's
and also cut down testing to 8 days. Yeah. It's just I don't understand what is going on. We kind of change certain variables and see if they work. If they don't, then introduce other ones. But if you introduce a bunch of different variables at the same time, how on earth are you going to know what works and what doesn't work?
F1 has always done that.
It's incredible.
They introduce DRS, Pirelli worn tyres, KERS, all at the same time, and then go, we need to change it up. And then you go, well, which one works?
Any notable sort of incidents or things that kind of caught your eye? I guess the start of the race wasn't particularly exciting.
It was good.
Yeah.
There was
quite a lot of overtaking. I enjoyed the race. I didn't get the whole backlash of, again, it goes back to, I actually enjoy watching motorsport. I don't, if that was a boring race, I don't know if you're watching it for the right reasons personally. I mean, everyone goes back to, it was amazing back in the day, but I sat through the Schumacher era and still loved it, and there was never any overtaking.
I mean, I did because I'm a Schumacher fanboy, but
there was never any overtaking, and it goes back to the fact that you can't just have everything all the time. I guess that comes down to the whole social. Everyone has a thing to say immediately straight after the race, but you want that moment where there's an incredible overtake, and if someone does it every race, like I remember Montoya overtaking Schumacher, no one overtook in that era. So when Montoya overtook Schumacher with that insane lunge at Brazil, everyone was talking about it, saying this is incredible. But if that happened every single race on every single lap,
normal,
people would
wouldn't
just
it?
go,
Yeah.
oh.
It was like Danny Rick last year at Monza, going down to turn 1 where he managed to lunge and dive bomb on Kimi Raikkonen.
Yeah.
That was huge news because, of course, in an era where even now there are overtakes, but not
Or
a
Eight,
lot.
wasn't it?
but-
Was there 8 this year? From what I heard.
What's that, sorry?
Overtakes? 8 overtakes?
It was 8 or 9.
8
I
or
thought
9.
it was 8 or 9.
It was 8 or 9, and last year they had 2. So
Yeah.
if you're going to look at it side by side, there was an improvement in
Yeah.
overtaking. But again, like,
It's so
are
random,
9
isn't it?
overtakes good? I guess,
Yeah.
again, like, it comes down to what is happening on track, what battles are happening. Was it entertaining? And
And
there
you're in
was-
trouble when you start counting the number of
Yeah,
overtakes.
exactly.
When do you, what is Formula
A
1?
good
Is
amount,
Formula
yeah.
1, you just look at a race and go, oh, there was X amount of overtakes.
If there's like
No.
one overtake for the lead or 10 in the midfield, people will probably remember that one
One
overtake and be
overtake
like,
for
oh, it's
the
an
lead.
amazing race.
Yeah, and that's, again, that kind of comes down to people like us as well, in that we have a responsibility to allow people to understand that F1 is not just about overtakes, it's about strategy. And, you know, strategies went wrong in Australia. I mean, Haas, it actually breaks my heart to think about Haas.
That's what I mean. The drama of F1 is just as much as
Yeah.
the on-track racing, and that can, people go, oh well, the racing should be on track, but at the end of the day, it's a sport. You like the sort
Everything.
of war of words, the stuff that comes after. That's what sport
But at
is.
the moment, it's not fully understandable for every F1 fan. If you're someone that's kind of a casual spectator, which, you know, arguably there are a lot out there, you know, not being able to understand that, or not understanding what different tyre compounds mean in terms of the overall race, or, you know, if somebody does have to watch an engine because they've only got 2 left and they don't want to get grid penalties, like, it's a complicated sport, and
That's
it is
there's
more about that.
too many rules. That
Too many rules.
As a fan, if I was watching Formula 1 for the first time at that race, and I watched that and saw that, oh great, these are the 2 best drivers of the generation, they're going against each other, F1's amazing, and then, oh, Hamilton's now 5 seconds behind because he's got to save his engine, I'd feel robbed and probably wouldn't watch
I'm
it
like,
again.
why? Why is this happening?
Why-
Did
yeah,
Hamilton
why?
make a
This
mistake?
is-
So he can't be that good
yeah.
then. You know, it's the lack of understanding,
Yeah.
I think, for new fans coming into the sport. 7 different dry compound tyres. Why is it now orange? Why do I now see orange?
Super duper mega hard
Yeah,
tyres.
the super duper mega hard tyres. But they just keep adding and adding and adding. And for me, you know, I've been a Formula 1 fan all my life, and yet I'm learning all the different things. The engine, you know, how that's changed since 2014 and stuff.
Came out
And-
the womb talking about it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, she had a Shumi hat on as I came out the womb. But it's crazy to think. Let's talk, as Jess, you just brought up, Haas.
Haas.
Let's have a moment's silence.
I think, you know, Haas have been almost, you know, one of the best newcomer team stories in a long time. They had a really strong first season for a rookie team, and they've kind of been going. Last year they were like a little bit lost slightly, but coming into Australia and having the cars on the grid where they were, everyone was. I mean, obviously that there was
Unbelievable,
They're
there
still
was
getting stick though for
Ferrari involvement.
people being like, I put something on the WTF1 Twitter about it saying, oh, everyone's complaining that Mercedes win every race, F1's boring, like, why are all the midfield teams 2 seconds behind, it's not fun, and then also complaining that now finally, like, Haas are doing really well, that should be good, but then the argument is that it's against the spirit of Formula 1 that their car, let's be honest, Ferrari have given that and they've painted it grey and turned up with
They
a
shouldn't.
halo.
That's the thing. Like, why are they being given stick for an achievement that they've made for such a small team in comparison? And to be running 4th and 5th in that race, and then was it 22 points they would have scored or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, and to wipe out from a very simple error. You know, you think like, you know, all of this practice, all this test. What was the issue
I can't
there?
believe it was an error.
They came out and said
they
human
said
error.
it was human error.
Like,
Immediately
how?
I was like, oh. And I remember we were WhatsApping and you called it, we always say, and it's back to Williams at Silverstone, every time a midfield team is up with the kind of big dogs,
Yeah, they crumble.
They fluff it, like Ocon and Perez. could have won
At
Bahrain.
Baku. Oh my gosh.
Do you know what I mean? It's how many times have we seen that where a Sauber, a Force India, or whatever is going to win, and then the podium ends up still Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull. Every race it happens.
But you could see how much it meant to those guys that they did make the mistake. You know, the picture of Grosjean comforting the mechanic, and it was a really emotional moment, and
I thought he was
genuinely
found his lap, to be fair, when I saw that video.
It was. Did you? It was genuinely heartbreaking, and as a fan of the sport, it was so heartbreaking that. And obviously then that directly affected the result of the race, because arguably without that, Seb would never have got the leapfrog, and Hamilton would have run away with
the conspiracy theorists must, like, you couldn't write it better. the team that everyone complained about being a Ferrari B team has screwed up both their pit stops.
Hey, screwed up, like it. Tyres, nice. I like
that. Screwed up both their pit stops, and it's allowed Vettel to leapfrog Hamilton to win the race.
It's absolutely
I honestly don't
ridiculous.
believe that is the case, because you can see
it was genuine raw emotion.
That is hilarious that you couldn't make that up. For a conspiracy theorist.
Such as the soap opera of F1.
Yeah.
But then again, so I guess the argument here is, was it pure luck, or was it a mistake by Mercedes? Now they've come out saying that it was a software glitch, that they couldn't see the true gap. Like Seb wasn't in the pit stop window.
Windows stopped working. Like, surely they can just time it. Like,
well, there's nobody with a stopwatch timing the lap times, but it does kind of come into question again. Are the teams too reliant on technology? Has there been a step away from, and because Mercedes can have all this tech and software and stuff that's tracking everything, are they too reliant on it? Because you could hear Lewis on the radio going, "Did I make a mistake? Was I not going fast enough?" But he was on virtual safety car deltas, so he was doing what he should. But they I think it was on Ted's notebook, he worked out that it was only 1.5 second difference that Hamilton could have made up before the virtual safety car that would have saved the leapfrog, and he would have won the race. So, we were talking about strategy errors. Like, the big dogs still make strategy errors, but it's a case of was it skill? Did Vettel do it purposefully, knowing? I mean, he stayed out for a much longer stint than Kimi or Lewis. And I have to say, as soon as I saw that Vettel didn't pit, I had this
horrible feeling.
This is he's gonna get the leapfrog.
Well, that's the thing. They put him in that position. They know what the gap was to Vettel, and then they pit, and then they're like, well, you're going to have to make some ground up just in case there's a safety car. But they're so unpredictable.
Ferrari made that. Ferrari played an absolute blinder with that, because
Bottas wasn't there.
Well, Bottas wasn't there, so they didn't have their rear gunner. Kimi pits early, and understandably gets the first stop as the guy ahead. Classic Kimi Räikkönen and his luck, that him actually beating Sebastian Vettel and being ahead of him has played against him. That's just, the guy can't catch a break.
Because when he found out that he'd actually been put on the worst strategy,
he wasn't on the worst
fuming.
Strategy, though.
No, I know.
But he got screwed by it. But it worked perfectly, because Kimi could pit, and then Hamilton obviously had to react, otherwise Kimi is going to win the race. And then Vettel can just stay out and gamble, and it worked perfectly. And like you said, it happened.
It's just poor Kimi, isn't it?
It's talking about, because everyone afterwards was saying, all right, a virtual safety car is meant to neutralise the race. No one is meant to gain or lose under the virtual safety car, but
that's part of F1. That's the safety car.
I hate that it should mix up the race.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point.
You can't complain that there's no overtaking and it's unpredictable. It's too predictable, and then go, oh yes, we need to make sure that when the safety car comes out, everything's exactly the same way as it is. No.
Which in a sense it does do, but it adds that element of, if someone pits or is at the right point at the right time, they'll gain some time, and that's the whole point of Formula One.
You need a lottery process to Formula One without it being gimmicky, basically.
Yeah. And obviously this pit lane's quite long, isn't it? So people would how much would they gain from the virtual safety car here compared to Australia? I'm not sure, because is Australia pit lane quite short?
It's quite short, yeah.
Is a longer pit lane meaning they'll gain less or more time?
I think in your head like working it out.
Because
how he gained was essentially you're getting almost a free pit stop because everyone on the track is driving at the same speed as you in the pit lane. So and you
can race to the line. You can race to the end of the pit line. So you can actually go a little faster than everybody else on track. But that's racing.
That's racing.
Part of it.
And Hamilton had the chance to re-overtake him. So I know you mentioned that, yes, Vettel was lucky, but also you make your own luck in F1, really.
Exactly.
And Hamilton, you basically, it wasn't the last lap of the race. Hamilton did have a genuine chance. And again, did it come down to the fact that the cars can't overtake each other? Does it come down to the fact that he had to save his engine? Does it come down to the fact that Mercedes, again, which we saw with Bottas, is horrific
following
in dirty
cars,
air? And you can see that already. But at the end of the day, he did have a chance to overtake him. He could have done a Danny Rick dive bomb on him.
I wish he had, to be honest. Although
that's what you want to see, though.
He dive bombed nobody when he was like, I'm going to go for it, and then just fell straight off the track. That was a bit crazy. Yeah, exactly. Everyone was like, oh, for God's sake.
And I guess that was what Max was trying to do.
Yeah.
Arguably. But again, he just couldn't do it for one reason or another. I mean, he was a little hot-headed, I think.
Classic Max, really.
Classic Max. But he's that exciting wonder kid, isn't he? That's proving that you can overtake him places that we've always been told you can't.
Yeah.
But
he doesn't care either. That's the main point.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't care what
and that's
people
what we
think.
need. And again, I guess it comes down as well to the people being penalised. I mean, Ricciardo got the grid place penalty for
ridiculous
reasons, and he came out fuming. And again, it's like, where do we draw the lines in the sport? Like, where do we say, okay, we've got to think about racing, and when we have to think about, well, actually, this is an FIA regulated sport, we have to follow the rules are the rules, and this is how it plays out.
But the FIA, we were talking about it, they said that he should have got a five place, and they were being lenient and gave him a 3-place.
But as a newer fan to the sport, if they tune into qualifying, they don't catch free practice, and then they're like, well, why has Ricciardo got a 3-place penalty? Oh, because he went too fast under a red flag, but he wasn't actually going to go past the red flag incident. And it's all this that just adds to the confusion.
Back to what you said, where with the grid penalties, you've maybe watched qualifying or maybe not. You see, oh, brilliant. Daniel Ricciardo theoretically has had his best result in years. He's second on the grid, and then you tune into the race and go, oh, Ricciardo's 12th.
Yeah. And I said in one of our previous videos that I reckon that towards the end of the season, there's going to be a lot of penalties in qualifying, maybe even the whole grid. I don't know, because I don't think a lot of teams will be able to have 3 engines throughout the whole season.
Even before the race, Sainz came out and said, we're already thinking about strategic engine penalties.
Yeah, where are they going to take it? Where can they?
That is not F1.
No.
That is so bad for the sport that you guys put on these kind of events. You think about everything like the acts, like putting on an amazing show for everyone. You go to all this stuff, and then the teams go, oh yeah, we're going to sacrifice this race because we've got to take engine penalties. It's not in the spirit of Formula 1, really, is it?
So speaking of not in the spirit, 3rd DRS was at Australian Grand Prix. I don't think it did much, really.
I'm trying to think if there was any overtakes.
I think it probably helped, but I think the fact that we didn't notice or did notice, maybe
it wasn't a huge.
Maybe it is a case of, at least they got closer. I would hate
to
maybe without
DRS
it.
To be that.
Yeah.
Maybe without
Closer,
it, the cars wouldn't have been as close, because it was still decent gaps between cars throughout the entire race. Obviously, there was a bit of a drop off between the top guys, but it's still testament to the fact that maybe it worked. So, but I think
it can still work even if there's not overtaking.
Yeah, we're just very used to complaining.
We love complaining.
I think is essentially the thing. But that's kind of like the first race over.
Yeah.
We've got, I think, based on that, what we saw in the first race is this season is going to have some interesting things happen. There's going to be a soap opera, and
I can't wait.
I'd be interested to know what, because you guys have to wait now until November, where the finale will be held. What are you looking forward to seeing most, do you think, from this season and in the lead up to the race here in Abu Dhabi?
I mean, for us here in Abu Dhabi, the key thing is that we're not targeting an F1 fan exclusively. We're targeting casual F1 fans and, in fact, non-F1 fans. So all of the talk around DRS, technicalities of the sport, the strategy, is very hard for us to communicate that to a casual, let alone a non-F1 fans. Really hard for us to do that. So we want really basic human level drama. You look at the race in Australia. For us, the fact that Ferrari won, despite me, I like Lewis, but the fact that Ferrari won is great for us. 80% of races have been won by Mercedes since 2014.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really bad for us as a promoter. We're selling we're selling entertainment. Going to a Grand Prix race is not cheap, but it should be great value. And that what matters therefore is what happens on the track as well as what happens off the track. We can take care of what happens off the track. We do a lot to make sure that the overall ambience is exciting and interesting, and it's a really, really strong weekend. In fact, we put in, we focus on a 4-day weekend. We have a thing called Super Thursday. Pit lane walk is really popular. And actually the non-F1 fans can really get behind something like a pit lane walk, which is great. But what happens on track, should be accessible. But it should also reward the fans, who want depth and want layers and want to get into certain other aspects. But it shouldn't be inaccessible unless you have that knowledge, and that's for us. And I was just thinking actually what you were saying there in terms of Liberty, and this is a bit of a hot take, but Liberty, obviously they speak our language in terms of increasing and improving the entertainment proposition off track. But look at American sport, how inaccessible baseball is, and I've been to a few baseball games, or American football. It seems to take forever to play out. I hope I hope they don't chime with that, with that kind of overall approach, which is sort of.
Hopefully they can bring the fan-centricness of American sports
and
to
be
F1,
at the table to represent the fan who may be casual or non, or may be in a hurry, or has other stuff going on. So
nice balance.
Yeah.
But that's hard.
And so you can make a choice about, it's either I commit myself fully to this, otherwise I have no understanding what's going on, in which case I'll move somewhere else.
Yeah.
At least in terms of percentage.
Yeah, exactly.
Fans who do so.
I suppose for you guys, do you not want it to come down to the title fight being on the last race? Because that, of course, adds to the excitement of on-track stuff.
Yeah.
I suppose last year, as it is the last race, and there's always, like last year, there's a great hype and buzz around the whole event anyway, but it would have been even more, I suppose.
And the quick answer to that is yes. However, last year was a bigger race for us than the year before. And then we had a championship decided the year before. Last year it wasn't. It was it had already been decided. So it's not always the case. How dramatic has the F1 season been? When you have one team so dominant, it's not good for anyone, whether there's a championship decider here or not. But obviously there's less likelihood of there being a championship decider if there's not that predictability. So it's really, the drama, the human story, the human story really helps. And speaking as a promoter, the human story really helps us to engage customers, fans who will purchase our tickets, and trying to get those human stories, and as well as obviously the sporting story and the championship story. Yes, it does help. But obviously for us, the big 2014 was great. We had double points, wasn't it? In 2020? No one likes double points.
Yeah.
But the
Never
fact
again.
that of course, and you could do a whole podcast on double points, but at least it mixed it up.
Yeah,
it did.
It's true.
Liberty are tough that they've come into the sport when it's not like the worst it's ever been, but they've essentially taken over the sport when you've got a team that's won the title so convincingly for the last 4 years. You'd argue they're going to win the title again this year. They're not changing the engines until 2021, so you say, well, okay, are Mercedes going to win until 2021? And you go, they've bought this new product just when it's got to the point where people are complaining about, oh, the engine noise isn't good enough, oh, it's really dominant, oh, like they have to react sooner rather than later. And I think that comes down to the engine regs again going, can we wait till 2021 to see someone other than Mercedes win a race?
Yeah, but then it takes a lot of planning as well, doesn't it,
Exactly.
to execute it. So let's move on to some Twitter questions and Instagram questions that we had in from some of you lovely people. So the first one is, Do you think Haas should be punished for the 2 unsafe releases? I think yes. It's a mistake, but yeah, I think they should be punished. What about you guys?
No. It's a punishment. It's a bigger punishment enough to lose a race. We were talking about it before, where drivers getting penalised for things like bodging up overtakes. You screw up an overtake, unless it's horrifically bad, the punishment in itself is you screwing up your own race.
Yeah, but I think the whole point, like the reason why fines and things are in place is to really reinforce the fact that if you do this and you cause danger in the sport, you're going to get punished. I personally think Haas should have been punished. It was
with a fine, not
with a fine.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. They should have been
yes,
fined.
not penalties, and in terms of
that affect their
So
season.
essentially what we're saying, Ricciardo arguably shouldn't have been punished because nothing, and I guess it comes down to was there an accident caused?
No.
Potentially, with the Haas release, there could have been, because the wheel was not correctly threaded onto the car. If that wheel had come off and caused a major incident, knocked someone over in the pit lane, caused like some actual damage, that's dangerous. Like, that's really dangerous, and that should not happen in the sport, because we've already seen, unfortunately, in the past, incidents happen under similar circumstances. So 100% Haas should have been penalised.
Yeah.
Daniel Ricciardo, was there any immediate danger? Was there a point where he would have caused an incident? Arguably not. So in that instance,
but it was a red flag, so.
And again, it's that whole: do we follow the rules because the rules are there for a reason, or do we use
Some common sense
common
as well.
sense?
Yeah.
And you start fining people for stuff that has no consequence, rather than going, okay, engine penalty, this penalty, this penalty.
Yeah, I think the two instances are very different. And one deserved penalising, and the other, I personally don't believe should have.
But he did speed under a red flag, which
he was slowing down.
But he was over the speed limit of a red flag.
It's also such a motorsport rule. It's not just an F1 rule, which could be seen as like the tyre release or anything like that. It's just F1 related, but this was the basics of motorsport. It's a red flag, stick to a speed limit, and there's no need for him to get back to the pits so quickly.
But then you argue like how clear. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on penalties. But was it clear for him to see? Did he purposely speed? Was he slowing down? Like, there's a lot of factors to take into play, and that's why we have stewards, right? Because they watch and they decide. But are the stewards always right? Is the referee in football always right?
No.
But
Okay, that was from that guy, Sleepy. Sorry, Nick, did you have a...
No, I was just saying, well, he kind of is, isn't he? You know, that's the point of the ref.
Yeah.
You know.
And his decision isn't always
No,
popular, but his decision is
can't make
final.
mistakes, but
they need to have control, don't they, like
exactly.
a referee.
So the direction is clear.
Yeah.
But maybe it's like wear a silly hat, or during the after race press conference or something. Maybe there's other punishments, right?
I don't know. I've seen Daniel wear a lot of silly hats. He'd probably
He'd do
love
that voluntarily,
that.
wouldn't he?
He would just do that, on his own.
So that was from that guy, Sleepy. Thank you for your question. Then we've got, should the lollipop men return as to ensure safe release from the pits? And that's from Nadimed.
Yes.
Do you think so?
Yes.
I think so too.
But there's still human error at play there.
But to be fair, the Haas guys, if you watch the replay, he had his hands in the air, waving, doing the Team America secret signal. And a lollipop man would have gone, okay, this guy's waving, something's wrong here, save the car.
Yeah.
But you saw it with, I think the first year they started putting in those lights was the year that Massa left the pits and pulled the fuel rig with him, which arguably, if he'd won that race, he'd have been world champion. So it's classic Formula One of saving 0.1 of a second versus screwing up your entire race and
for both cars
and completely DNFing.
Yeah, I think there is human error, and there is a flip side, obviously, that you think that lollipop man is so on edge that as soon as it looks like it's, which we've seen before, lollipop men have lifted the car, people have got run over, including the lollipop man. So there's kind of arguments each way. Nick, do you have any kind of thoughts on pit stops? Back to the old days, refueling and stuff as well? Or?
I don't know. I mean, pit stops. It's an important part of the spectacle. And humans are more interesting than machines. So
it's a very good point, actually. Humans are a lot more interesting to watch.
Does it add drama?
Yeah, we do love
You
drama.
want more driver input because
There's this tension between efficiency and risk. I mean, because as you improve efficiency, you what you're doing, you're moving towards stability, and stability lacks drama. So you've got to balance the two things. I don't know if that's
look at MotoGP in the race that they've just had. They had their season opener, and it came down to the final corner of the final race. It comes down to drivers being heroes and going for these crazy moves and doing all this stuff, and you go, that's more interesting than watching Mercedes. I know there is the point, and that's why some people and a lot of people watch it and go, well, Mercedes have the best car, they've built the best car, they deserve to win, that's Formula One, deal with it. But at the same time, you're back to what you were saying about the casual fan coming in, say they've gone to the concert and they go, okay, I've got a ticket for Formula One now, I'll go see it. They want to see the cars overtaking each other on every corner, whereas if you said to them, oh, well, the reason this is happening is because Mercedes have the most money and have built the best car. That's not interesting to them, is it really?
No. Yeah, so two things. One, it is inherently more interesting, and two, it's much easier to communicate. If you think that's what we need to do as a promoter, we need to communicate to audiences who may not spend the time that, core F1 fans would.
Geeks do.
We're all geeks at heart. Thank you, Nadim Ed. Then we got, this is from Yas Marina Circuit. Were you upset when you realised we hadn't actually painted the circuit pink?
Yes.
I think Force India were more upset than maybe we were, but yes.
I was. Yeah. I genuinely fell for it.
Yeah,
it was a very good Photoshop by whoever did that.
We were ribbed by them for falling for that.
Mm-hmm.
Fake news.
It was very well executed fake news, wasn't it?
There was a lot of pages.
We got some. No, I shouldn't say.
Cut off.
Well, Force India were upset about the whole thing.
Yeah, Esteban especially.
Esteban was wanted to see the whole
process. He retweeted it and everything. He fell right for that sucker, didn't he? So, good old Esteban.
But that's not on him.
No.
We would have done the same.
Exactly.
Great promotion for that year's app. So well done.
Now moving to some Instagram questions. K-Tate 2001.
By the way, sorry, did crash in on there. It fooled a lot of people here as well because it wasn't generally known that that's what we were doing. So
did people coming out on the track?
We had a large percentage of people go, what, where?
Which section?
Where is it? What section? What?
Why do you say this?
You can't just go paint the track.
Amazing.
Amazing.
That's all right. So K-Tate 2001 from Instagram asks, what race from previous years do you want back on the calendar? And I know already it's Istanbul. 100%. 1,000,000%. I love that track so much.
It's a good track.
Yeah, amazing track. What about you guys?
Imola. Easily.
That's actually a very good shout as well.
That's a classic.
Just such a good track. I think there needs to be more of a mix of circuits personally as well. It comes down to, again, the entertainment factor of Formula One is it really a surprise that the same team wins every race when the same, like every track, while they have their own unique qualities, realistically are between 15 and 20 turns, have a long DRS straight with a hairpin, have this and this, whereas you go, okay, let's have Abu Dhabi like this, let's have Monza, let's have Spa, let's have a circuit, not an oval, but something absolutely, why not?
For any NASCAR fans out there.
I really like Austria because, and people were going, oh, why are they doing Austria? It's only got 7 turns, it's not suited to Formula One.
It's different.
But the first year was the only year where Mercedes were on pole because it was suited to another car. Williams had a car that only worked in a straight line and just were unbelievable on the straights, and Massa got pole, Bottas was second, and you go, okay, what if we had a race? Because Monaco every year people go, oh well, this is a high downforce track. Mercedes didn't do well there. Red Bull have a chance. It comes down to
controversial though. Yeah. I would like to see Monaco replaced. I don't want it on this. I don't want it on the circuit calendar.
No, Monaco is the one track that, although a lot of races can be boring, it's Monaco, and I know that I'm not going to see an amazing race unless it's wet. And that's absolute carnage. But then I think we all kind of hold out for that wet race, and then it happens. You're like, yes.
Yeah. again, it's back to F1 being F1. Some races are boring. Deal with it. You know what I mean?
That's the way it is.
Deal with it, Jess.
The history of the sport.
I just think like whenever we get the lead up to Monaco, everyone's like, oh, Monaco, and then all the feedback afterwards is, why is this track on the calendar still?
Especially when the Indy 500 is one of the best races of the year every year, and it's straight after Monaco.
Yeah.
It's good promotion for them.
Yeah, I would like to. But I mean, next year we're going to see potentially new tracks, and it's cool. Like we were saying, we can't believe that it's been 10 years of Yas Marina Circuit this year.
It feels like a new track.
It still feels like a new track, but I guess it's good to have new tracks on the calendar, because with the sport moving, then we get the need for different types of tracks, and again it adds to that drama, like you were just saying, like different tracks provide different opportunities for different teams, and we don't want, if it's always the same ones, I think there should be a rotation in. There should be core tracks that are there every single year, and then maybe we rotate certain tracks in. I mean, like, it's a bit like Germany, right? I mean, it's not,
they swapped,
it's not for that reason that they swap, but and I think it could take the pressure off tracks as well, because it means that you don't have to potentially pay the fees that you have to pay every year, and maybe it could be a way of helping the financial burdens, but also keep it interesting.
I think Silverstone need that right now, don't they, to kind of come back in and out, but then there's talk that they'll be okay, so who knows. I really hope it stays at Silverstone, although Alistair, who lives a long way away and we go all the time, wants it to be in Gatwick.
If we could go back to Brands Hatch, I'd be very happy. Yeah.
My back garden, please.
Okay, so Tom Fawkes GG from Instagram says, how many races do you think will be won, but not by Mercedes, Ferrari or Red Bull? 0.
Easiest question ever.
0. Alistair?
Annoyingly 0. I'd love it to not be 0, but 0.
Yeah.
Who do you think? Which team do you think is, apart from those top 3? Which team do we think potentially?
I would have said Force India, but they're not doing that well. So I think Renault.
It comes down to again that is it good for the sport that only 3 teams can win, and the gap is so much bigger. I know people claim that I'm a sort of Red Bull fanboy when I say this. Okay, but the Vettel era was so much more exciting than this Mercedes era, because, let's be honest, 2 races went down to such drama, like the Brazilian Grand Prix of 2012. Alonso almost won the title in that car, whereas back to McLaren, they just could not do anything because it's so dependent on engine formula now, and the gaps between the top teams are huge.
It's
like
ridiculous,
you don't ever get
that underdog story.
The underdog story of was Kobayashi and Perez got a few podiums for Sauber. Maldonado won a race, but it could never happen now unless all the teams, like, you'd have to have a catastrophic failure, because even the races in 2014, I remember Rosberg, there was a race where Rosberg just screwed it up at the first corner, and he still finished second. Yeah. You could be down to last place.
McLaren in Australia finished a very comfortable 5th. And whilst they didn't look like they were going to challenge for a podium, we've got a whole season to go.
We have. That's a great way of rounding this up, Jess. We have got a whole season to go. I'm being given the cut it off sign, so...
How long have we been talking?
7 days.
It's because we bottled it up.
We've just
did.
Like gone,
Maybe we should talk about the race before.
But thank you guys for joining me. Nick from Yas Marina Circuit, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
That has been our first WTF1 podcast. It has been very fun indeed. We've been here in Abu Dhabi.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Always is,
really. Talking for another hour.
Yeah, we're just going to keep rolling. So we'll see you guys very soon for our next podcast.
Bye.
Bye.